In 1649, the English Parliament executed King Charles I without the permission of its Scottish allies. The result was that allies became enemies, as Charles II was proclaimed in Edinburgh. The leader of the new English Commonwealth, Oliver Cromwell, decided to respond with force, leading over 12,000 veteran soldiers across the border in 1650. But his invasion of Scotland soon came unstuck, and he was driven from the defences of Edinburgh back to his supply base here at Dunbar harbour. With his army, sick and tiring, camped around Dunbar parish church, he was forced to look on as a superior Scottish army gathered on the slopes of Doon Hill above him. The Scottish army, greater in numbers, was led by David Leslie, a veteran commander of the Civil Wars. He had even served alongside Cromwell in former battles. On the slopes of Doon Hill, however, Leslie knew he not only had a strong position, but also one that would force Cromwell to consider evacuating by sea. But it also meant that he was in a position from which he could not attack the English. On the 2nd of September 1650, godly ministers and political superiors persuaded Leslie to lead his 15,000 to 20,000 men down from the position on the top of Doon Hill, into a place from which they could attack the Commonwealth forces. They came down and drew upon a new position along the side of the Brock's Burn. Cromwell led his men out of camp and drew up on the opposite side. The two forces faced one another, but could not attack across the steep banks. But Cromwell decided to shift his positions during the night. Leaving only a screen of dragoons along the Brock's Burn, he led the rest of his forces into a long column stretching back from Brand's Mill towards Dunbar. They would cross the water here at the shallow ford, and then, falling upon the right wing of the Scots army, either break out towards England or be able to turn their strength and destroy the Scottish army in detail. Sure enough, so early in the morning, the Scottish horses were still not ready for battle, and their riders dismounted. Accordingly, when Cromwell's heavy Ironsides charged across this open ground here, they caught the Scottish horse totally unprepared for the attack. A desperate cavalry battle ensued, in which horses and men struggled for superiority. The battle ebbed and flowed, but in the meantime, the Commonwealth infantry had also begun to cross the ford and had engaged with the Scottish right wing on this ground here. At push of pike, and with muskets blazing, the Scottish foot were driven back. Because of the lie of the burn, they weren't able to bring up their other regiments in reserve, and the right wing quickly began to collapse. Cromwell was then able to turn his victorious horsemen along the flanks of the Scottish position, wrapping up the army and driving it off in defeat. Those who could fled, pursued along the road back to Haddington. Leslie's army had been decisively beaten, although it would take many more months before Cromwell could complete his conquest of Scotland.